going to ask Shakeel Syed, who is the director of the Islamic Council, the Shura Council here in Southern California, to come and talk to us a little bit. Shakeel, I've had the privilege of knowing Shakeel for the last couple of years here as I've become more active in this field, and I know that there are few people that I can turn to for a more honest assessment of what's going on with Shakeel. I always get a word, but it always a very positive word, always a very encouraging word. And I get these emails that I think he sends out to a lot of people, not just to me, with little humorous things, little asides about the events of the day, and they always have this very ironic twist to them. So perhaps in his talk today he'll bring some of that. You know, he serves as the executive director of the Shura Council, which serves a population of well over 500,000 now here in the Southland of Southern California. And it's a pretty diverse population. Some of you who are priests or pastors, and you may think your congregation is pretty diverse. Imagine having a group that stretches, really an immigrant group, that stretches from North Africa and sub-Saharan Africa all the way across from east to west, the Levant area, the Saudi Peninsula, the Indian subcontinent, all the way down into Southeast Asia with the islands of Malaysia and others, into China, especially the eastern portions of China, back into Afghanistan and into areas that are hotspots like Iraq and Iran, and to try to be able to serve the religious needs of a group as diverse as that is pretty amazing. And to do it without stepping on somebody's toes is probably impossible. So Shakeel doesn't try not to step on people's toes. He's willing to take on, including some of his Muslim brothers and sisters, when he feels that he disagrees with them, especially on issues like cooperation with the police and the FBI and things like that. So I think you will be in, I know you're going to be in for a real treat here as we listen to Shakeel Syed send us out with a call to action. Shakeel, please come and join us.
Very good afternoon, friends. So the first thing we need to do is I need to give a disclaimer. I gave about $100 to Randy for this introduction. So next time you have a speaking engagement, you know who to call on to introduce you. And secondly, you have this blue form with you. On question number 3, there is a guy by the name Shakeel, so you make sure you put 5 next to it. What a pleasure and honor to be with all of you this evening. But before I start, I cannot but help and honor the people who have brought us together. Those of the committee members and those who have put this program together and brought all of us. Could you please stand up so that we could honor you? I mean, God bless you for doing this. I believe none of you are Palestinians, except so it speaks volumes for your commitment, your passion, and your dedication and courage to deal with this toxic, tough issue called Palestine. So my hats off to each one of you, and there is nothing in reciprocity I can give you except raise my hands and pray for your well-being and long health, and even more courage to raise more help in all churches and synagogues and mosques. I would begin with this real-life experience. Last Christmas, I celebrated at All Saints, as I have been doing for many years. And on my way back home, I was stopped around on Olympic Boulevard, and close to Staples Center, essentially, some cross street. It was a DUI check. And I was stopped as well. And the young police officer, half my age, asked me to blow my breath on his face, or close to his mouth. I said, I really feel sorry for your job. And he said, do what I asked you to do. So I gave him a smile, and I think it wasn't very pleasant. He said, get out of your car. And certainly I don't look like Randy, so I had to obey him and get out of the car. And his next question was, have you been drinking? And my answer was yes. So he asked me to walk, take 10 steps, and follow that finger, and so on. And I passed that test. So he said, were you drinking? I said, yeah, I was drinking. So he was confused now. And then he asked me, get in your car and get out of here. I said, well, let me tell you what I was drinking. I was in a church celebrating Christmas, and I was drinking spiritual life. And I said, I still feel sorry for you that you have to do this on Christmas Eve. The point is, I feel intoxicated now after a day-long talk about justice. And I hope that you all are drunk, so you'll excuse me whatever I'm going to say before I So my friends, now that you all know that, or I know that you all are awake, let me begin invoking a prayer that Prophet Moses recited before visiting the then delusional and self-proclaimed God named Pharaoh. Quran reminds us with this prayer that he supplicated because he was going to confront power who thought that he is God. And the Quranic Arabic text is Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Translated roughly as, O my Lord, expand my chest, ease my task, and remove any impediments from my speech so that they may understand me. So I pray that I am able to and will be able to say all that I want to say fully and freely today, and also that which is crying inside me. And may my cries reach your heart as a song. Some stories do cry, some stones do cry, and some other stones make you cry. I cried when for the first time I stepped onto the cobblestone streets of the holy city of Jerusalem. There I felt I am walking onto the layered history of pain, anguish, blood, glory, and some glory. No people, I believe, can live fruitfully and triumphantly without strong memory of their past. As I walked the sacred narrow streets of Jerusalem, I saw Jews, Arabs, Russians, Swedes, Uzbeks, Japanese, among many others from all over the planet. All of them perhaps have access to the fullness of their myriad histories, except Palestinians. Palestinians must, however, are asked to survive from the meager basket of few mean yesterdays. They have been largely overwhelmed by a dominant force that has wronged them, dramatically emptied their memories, undermined their self-esteem, implanted them with palatable voices, and stripped them along the way of the sheerest corona of self-determination. They alone are presumed passless, and they are left to cobble self-esteem from a vacuum of their stolen history. So I ask myself, how does then one respond to the near complete dehumanization of a proud people we call Palestinians? The Palestine question, for the most part, and by most of the people, is about the occupied land, which the leaders of our nation try to rephrase it as disputed land. My appeal to us today is that the Palestinian question is not just about the land. It's about a proud people. It is about their sacred dignity. It is about their glorious history. And it is about their children and their progeny to come many, many centuries later. A few years ago, during my visit to the occupied Palestine, I had a conversation with an 80-year-old great-grandmother, Sahar, in the Dehesha refugee camp outside of Bethlehem. She shared her story of owning more than 200 dunams of land at one time. And for those of us who don't know dunam, a dunam equals to apparently measured by a day of plowing. So in 8, 10, 12 hours, however long you plow, multiply that by 200 times. Sahar now lives in a shack of less than 200 square feet. I asked her what one thing that she would like to see before leaving this world. Sahar unhesitatingly quoted this Quranic text, لَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, that God has conferred equal dignity on all children of Adam. And she said that until I reclaim that God granted dignity for myself, my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, they can have all the land they want, I will resist. Near instantly, I thought, maybe Sahar may have walked to my dude where I was born by the name Gandhi, who said the following, I quote, "How can one be compelled to accept slavery? I simply refuse to do the master's bidding. He may torture me, break my bones, and even kill me. He will then have my dead body, but not my obedience. Ultimately, therefore, it is I who am the victor and not he, for he has failed in getting me to do what he wanted done." End quote. I resist, therefore I exist, was basically the message of Sahar, because Sahar remembers Golda Meir, who said, Palestinians do not exist. She also remembers Golda Meir's successor, Levi Eshkol, who said, what are Palestinians? When I came from Palestine, when I came here to Palestine, there were less than 250,000 non-Jews, mainly Arabs and Bedouins. Sahar also remembers Menahem Begin, calling her and her people two-legged beasts. And of course, who can forget Yitzhak Shamir, who considered Palestinian people as grasshoppers who could be crushed. I resist, therefore I exist, is what Sahar told me. So it is not just about the land, nor it is about the two religions and nationalisms, nor between borders and neighboring states, but it is about an indigenous people deprived of their homeland, dispersed, uprooted, exiled, and made permanent refugees for more than 3 generations, and forced into a living as less than humans. It is about that dehumanization of a proud people who are denied justice. It is said that justice dies when dehumanized, no matter how exactly it may be exercised. So my friends, to not be outraged by the injustice in Palestine, I say, is to risk your very soul, or at the very least, the corrosion of it. Yet we see many high priests, rabbis and imams included, of all tribes, competing each other for the best colored robes. They are busy debating the benefits of pragmatism and gradualism. They may not realize that at the altar are the central principles of their own faith. To know what is right and not do it is the worst cowardice, says Confucius. Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad least cared about what is most practical. They were always steadfast in their principles, even when they had to pay a high price. Unlike the high priests of our time, their covenant was with God, and they were busy planning and plotting to frustrate the wicked and comfort the oppressed. Our high priests seem to have made a covenant with fellow priests and politicians, and they spend time in shining their shoes and planning their next itinerary, flying first class to solve third world problems. It's the duty of good people like you and I to remind our priests that piety is not standing in the pulpit, but kneeling down in the pews with the brokenhearted. For there is nothing more whole than a broken heart. They must also be told that they cannot drown the cries of the oppressed with the noise of hymns. The brokenhearted knows all too well that a stone sculpture by an artist's poetic hands is always lonely. A wooden carving charmingly placed in the cathedral ceiling cannot sing a song. But those with the brokenhearted are always and only attuned to the silent cries of the stone sculptures and the beautiful wooden beams, quietly witnessing the high priests in the pulpit. I am reminded of the Jewish prophet Habakkuk, who gifts us with these profound words. Woe to him who heaps up what is not his own. Woe to him who gets evil gain for his house. For the stone cries out from the wall, and the beam from the woodwork responds. Woe to him who builds a town with blood and founds a city on inequity. Equity and justice, my friends, has become scarce, and inequity and injustice exceedingly common in our times. Arguably, it is because we the people have delegated justice to the priests and the politicians, who did not spare any effort in sending justice to the gallows. For everyone we know, for example, we know how our Nobel Peace Prize winner, the closet Muslim, is not tired of repeating the stale chant, Israel has the right to defend itself, parentheses, by slaughtering thousands of women and children. And then we end up rewarding the defenders with our hard-earned tax dollars, few $100 million here and a couple of $1 billion there, and then also giving them the weapons of mass destruction to kill more children or mow the next lawn. Our nation rarely agrees on any issue unconditionally, except when it comes to the well-being of our 51st state. Or conversely, some people may say the country of Israel got 50 states. While more and more of our fellow citizens here and their children are forced to live on the margins, to the extent that now people in Detroit are being denied drinking water, while our tax dollars are directly and indirectly paying for watering the lawns of the colonial settlers in the indigenous land of Palestine. Yet we see deafening silence from our professional priests. They claim to be the inheritors of the prophets, yet they fail to recognize that the prophets advocate for the weak, interfere against the oppressor, and always remain intolerant toward the wrongs and resent the injuries inflicted on the innocent. I recall a conversation with a bishop who agreed with the Palestinian civil society's call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. My good bishop friend said, "We will not divest to punish the oppressor, but we will reinvest in the oppressed." I shared this logic with a BDS advocate, a dear friend of mine from Palestine, who continues to live under and resist the Israeli occupation, and he responded, the good bishop. The good bishop wants to keep the slave healthy in service for the master. And then he added that morality and humanity can neither be selective nor be exercised for expediency. Our role, my friends, today is not simply to sing songs and chant hymns, but to comfort the wrinkled hands and strengthen the wobbly knees. And in the process, if we have to sacrifice a bit of our comfort, or lose a friend or a bishop for that matter, or go simply out on one limb, we smile and say, so be it. Justice is greater and transcends people and bishops and priests and rabbis and imams. In the farewell address, the supposedly founding father who owned slaves, but asked for the freedom of others, George Washington, said as follows, I quote, "Passionate attachment of one nation for another produces a variety of evils, and that such sympathy would be facilitating the illusion of an imaginary common interest in cases where no real common interests exists." End quote. Many US presidents and senators, including this one-time Senator Barack Hussein, underlined Obama, have callously violated this Washingtonian warning that with much ease. Listen to what the Senator Obama had said in 2008. I quote, "The bond between Israel and the US is rooted in more than our shared natural interests. It is rooted in the shared values and shared stories of our people." End quote. Of course we share values. In Israel we have targeted assassinations. And in the United States we maintain a kill list on the Pennsylvania Avenue, which is revisited every Tuesday. Of course we also shared stories. Never-ending Jim Crow here in the United States, and ever-growing apartheid in Palestine. A partnership indeed of shared values and shared stories. Another expression of this lopsided partnership we see in its 45+ US vetoes protecting nearly every crime committed by Israel and allowing the occupier to maintain the status quo as de facto. History teaches us that all powers, including empires, have an expiration date. We also know that things expire, stink. And that which stinks make everyone sick. This diagnosis was offered recently by none else but the President of Israel, Mr. Reuven Rivlin, and I quote him, "It is time to honestly admit that Israeli society is ill, and it is our duty to treat this disease," end quote. I don't expect our president or any US politician to have the chutzpah or the chutzpah to admit that we too in America are just as sick, if not worse. Yet it is strange to say the least that some in our country continue to believe that the remedy of justice will come from the United States, the same place which continues to perpetuate the disease of injustice in Palestine and to Palestinian people, among many other places. My friends, we all have said much since morning. For sure, I have said a little more than 1,500 words in the last few minutes. One of my favorite poet-philosopher, a non-Muslim infidel named Khalil Gibran from Lebanon, said this: "In too much talking, thinking is half murder." Gibran loved Jesus, and he wrote qasidas. What would you translate qasidas in English, John? The beautiful poetic expressions in love of your beloved. He glorified him, but Gibran expressed nearly no love for the men in robes presiding the places of worship. We now need to go where the words cannot take us. We must cry in silence. We must cry with the heart of broken-hearted, for they cry and they lend their tears as company to their longing eyes, and they cry to comfort the aching heart with hope. I am reminded of your and our beloved teacher, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. I quote, "We may accept finite disappointment, but we must never lose infinite hope. Stones will keep crying until we respond with all of our might and with the one asset we all have in abundance, truth. Until we reclaim and restore the human dignity and freedom and also the land for the people of and in Palestine. We must do this for the sake of souls whose very broken bodies have been enduring the unimaginable days of darkness in the occupied Palestine every day for more than 6 decades. And we must do this on behalf of their children and ours, whose spirit thirsts for a future of freedom and justice. This is a struggle that we cannot lose, for in the very making of it, we will discover, if nothing else, ourselves. Come what may and cost what it may. No compromise with occupation and no love with occupier. Thank you very much.